Hello everyone! In this lesson, we will learn how to set up dynamic navigation menus that you can control from within the WordPress admin. Let's dive right into it and let me show you what I'm referring to. So as of this moment, if I want to make changes to this navigation menu up here in the header, I would need to jump into my text editor and hop into the header.php file. And just a little bit below the opening body tag, here we see a nav element, and within that we have an unordered list with a list item for each link. Now every project is different. On some projects, you will want to control your navigation directly through the HTML in a template like this, but in other projects, you'll want to be able to control the navigation menu from within the WordPress admin screens. My general rule of thumb is that if I'm building a custom one-off website for a particular client, I prefer to keep the navigation links right here in the HTML code. However, if you're building a more generic theme that you want to submit to the WordPress free theme repository so thousands of people can use it, or if you want to build a premium theme that people buy from you, in that case, you want your theme to be as flexible as possible. And in that case, it's basically mandatory that you make your navigation menus controllable from the WordPress admin. Now, ultimately, in this course, at the end of the day, I'm going to control my navigation menus directly with HTML, just like this. But knowing how to set up dynamic WordPress menus is an essential skill that I want to be sure you master. So right now, let's get started. Over in your web browser, if you jump into the WordPress admin screen, you know that with most themes, if you hover over this appearance item in the menu, within this pop-out menu that appears, there's almost always an option named Menus. However, at this moment, we don't see one, and that's because in our current theme that we're building, we haven't registered any menu locations. So in order to add a menu location to our theme, let's jump into our text editor, and in our theme folder, open up the functions.php file. If we look down towards the bottom of this file, you'll remember that we've already created a function named University Features, and on this line, we've told WordPress to call or run that function during the after setup theme event or hook. Now, when you want to add new menu locations to a theme, this is the event or hook that you want to hook onto. So cool, we've already got a function tacked onto that. So within our University Features function, either right above or below this add theme support line, let's just add a new line, and we're going to call a WordPress function named register nav menu. Within the parentheses, we need to give it two arguments. The first argument is just a name that we get to make up for this particular menu location. Let's begin with the menu up in the site's header. Let's call it header menu location. So this name doesn't matter. I just made it up. It could be anything. Okay, and then a comma because we want to give it a second argument. And this is our chance to list a human-friendly name. Header space menu space location. This is the text that will actually show up in the WordPress admin screen. Cool, let's save this file, and if we jump back into the WordPress admin screen and refresh, now when we hover over the appearance item in the sidebar, we do indeed see a menus option. We have not created any menus yet, so nothing shows up here, but down here we can create our first menu. Now the name here doesn't exactly matter, but just so we're on the same page, why don't we name it My Main Header Menu. And then in terms of what links we actually want in the menu, let's pretend that we only want About Us and Privacy Policy. So to get rid of another link, you can just click on this arrow and choose Remove. So I will remove everything except About Us and Privacy Policy. You can also just drag and drop, so if I wanted About Us to be first, okay, and then let me delete all of these other links. Okay, so now I just have the two pages that I want. About Us and Privacy Policy. Let's click Create Menu. Okay, now that we've created it, here's the important part. Down towards the bottom, we see Menu Settings. It's just personal preference, but I definitely do not want to automatically add new pages, so I will leave this unchecked. And then for this second option of display location, well, at the moment our theme only has one location, and this is definitely the one we're interested in. So let's check that box and then click Save Menu once again. And now all we need to do is jump back into our header.php file and replace this hard-coded unordered list element. So you can either delete it outright or just comment it out temporarily. It's totally up to you. In my case, I'm going to end up using static HTML like this. So I'm just going to comment this out. And now let me show you how to output a dynamic menu into your template instead. So where that unordered list was, just drop into PHP and call a WordPress function named wp_nav_menu. Okay, now we need to tell this function which menu location this spot in the template should represent, right? So back in our functions.php file, remember the code name that we chose for the menu location that we registered is header menu location with the capital M and L. So you can either memorize that name or just copy and paste it to your clipboard. Okay, and then back in header.php, we need to give this function that name. Now this function doesn't take simple arguments, so we can't just begin typing here. Instead, this function demands that we pass it an array of arguments. Remember, we worked with associative arrays just a couple of lessons ago. So within the parentheses, let's say array, and then open up its own pair of parentheses. In between those, why don't we drop down to a new line to stay organized? And just like before, when we would say cat equals meow or dog equals bark, this time around the parameter name is theme location, and then we want it to equal, so equal greater than symbol. And then this is where you paste in that name we made up for that menu location. So now we've created this hollowed out skeleton area in our header template that corresponds with the header menu location that we registered in our functions file. Cool, so if we save header.php and refresh the front end of our website, we see the navigation menu that we created in the admin. And forevermore, if we make any updates or changes to that menu, so if I drag and drop privacy policy to be the first link, and then click Save Menu, as soon as we refresh the front end, notice the order switched. Cool. Now, if you didn't 100% follow everything I just did, that's a-okay because practice makes perfect. And now we are going to do the same thing for this menu in the footer as well as this menu. Let's begin by jumping back into our functions.php file. And in order to save ourselves a bit of typing, we can just copy and paste this line, right? Because we want to register another menu location. So copy this line and then right below it, paste it in. And now we can just swap in new arguments. So the variable name for this menu location, this area, why don't we call this footer location 1, and we can call this one footer location 2. So we get to make up whatever name we want. Let's call it footer location 1. And then for the human readable name, let's say footer location 1. And then let's just paste that line again. So on this line, paste it in. Change this to footer location 2. And change the human readable name to footer location 2. And if I save this file and refresh my WordPress admin screen, you can see that now whenever I'm working with a menu, down here under display location, we now have 3 options: header, footer 1, and footer 2. Now before we go ahead and create a couple new test menus for these locations, why don't we first jump in to the footer.php file in our theme folder, and let's hollow out those hard-coded unordered list elements. So for this first one, we could just delete this unordered list. You're free to do that, but in my case, I'm just going to comment it out instead temporarily to show you how this works. But at the end of the day, for this particular project, I want to stick with the hard-coded menus. But back to the task at hand, whether you delete this unordered list or just comment it out temporarily, In its place, you want to drop into PHP, and you could just copy and paste the code that we wrote in header.php a few minutes ago, but it's almost just as fast to type it out again. So the function name is WP nav menu, and then we pass it an array of arguments. Parameter is theme location, and we set that to equal the variable name that we are interested in. So in this case, it would be footer location 1. So let's copy that. Quotes, paste in the value. Cool, so we've hollowed out the first footer location, and now we can just copy and paste this for the second footer. So copy this block of PHP code we just wrote. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the next column, right? Here's the other unordered list in the footer. So you can either delete that or comment it out. Totally up to you. But in its place, you can just paste in your clipboard. And for the theme location, let's change this from footer 1 to footer 2. Cool. Now, if we save this file and jump back into our admin dashboard, why don't we go ahead and create a couple more test menus and assign them to the footer 1 and 2 locations. So I will click Create New Menu. Let's call this one My Magical Menu. The name doesn't matter. And here's what I can choose from. Maybe I just want to add a link to sample page and cookie policy, right? This is really random. It's just for educational purposes. And the important part, display location. Let's imagine I want to assign this new menu to the footer location 1. So click Save Menu. And why don't we create another third menu for the second footer location? So create new menu. Let's call this one Super Amazing Menu. And maybe this one will just have a link to the About Us page. And maybe I'll create a custom link here to google.com with link text of Google, add to menu. The important part, display location, let's assign this to footer location 2, then click Save. And now if we refresh the front end of our website, cool, we see those custom dynamic WordPress menus that we just created. And if I scroll back up to the header and use one of these header links, you'll notice that once I'm on the privacy policy page, that link lights up as yellow or as active. And if I go to the About Us page, then it stays lit up. And that's a nice benefit of using WordPress dynamic menus. If I right-click on this current About Us link and choose Inspect, you can see that the list item element for that link has a special class of current menu item. And then you can target this class name with your CSS to make the link a different color. I've already done that for us because remember I wrote the CSS for this layout, but that's just something that I want you to be aware of in general when working with WordPress websites. For this specific website and this project, I actually don't want to use dynamic navigation menus. I prefer to keep control of the menus in my template files. It's just personal preference, but now at this point that I've shown you how to use dynamic navigation menus, I don't feel like I've done you a disservice. You can always use this lesson as a reference to implement them on any WordPress website. You can replay this lesson and review the code as many times as you need to. But at this point, I'm actually going to remove the dynamic menus from my theme files and uncomment back out these unordered list hard-coded links. Now again, this is totally just personal preference, but I do want you to be able to do things either way. So we've seen the dynamic WordPress menu way, but for now, I'm going to kiss it goodbye. So right now I'm in header.php. I'm just going to delete this and then uncomment back out my original unordered list. And then I'll do the same thing in my footer file. Delete that PHP, delete the comment, and the closing comment down here. Do the same thing for footer 1. Delete this PHP, delete the opening comment and the closing comment. And just for good measure, back in my functions.php file, I can delete these 3 register nav menu lines. Cool, so now if I save that, and if I try to refresh the menu screen in my admin, you'll notice I see a message, your theme does not support navigation menus or widgets. which makes sense. I just deleted all of the applicable code. So up in the address bar, you can just go back to the root of WP admin to take you to the main admin screen, and we're back to where we started. So now if I go to the front end of my website and refresh this About Us page, we've got our old navigation back, but you'll notice that even though I'm on the About Us page, this doesn't light up yellow to show that it's the current page you're on. So you might be wondering how to have that nice "this is the page you're on" feature when using your own menu HTML. Well, let me show you how we can do that.